Hello again, my DIY loving friends, and welcome to Medicated Housewife DIY, where crafting and mental health come together. Transform your space this fall with stunning DIY high-end decor on a budget using Dollar Tree finds. Elevate your home style without breaking the bank. Get ready for neutral, boho, cozy vibes, and autumn charm. So what are you waiting for? Let's go DIY together. For this first DIY, I'm using this glass bowl and glass candle holder, both from Dollar Tree. I'm using some blue painter's tape to tape off the top lip of the candle holder and also to tape off the top lip of the glass bowl, taping off about an inch or so down on both of them. And this does not have to be exact, and it really doesn't have to be all that straight a line either. I'm going to paint the outside of both of the pieces using this Rust-Oleum bleached stone texture spray paint, which I will link for you in the description box below. And just a note on using this paint, you will need several coats to get full coverage, and you definitely need to allow the pieces to dry overnight. I'm going to glue the bottom of the bowl to the bottom of the candle holder using some E6000 glue, which I will link for you below because they are glass and they're kind of heavy, so I really want a strong hold. And just like that, we have this gorgeous stone look candle holder or pedestal bowl. It has a little bit of a cement industrial feel as well, and I am loving the clear glass poking through. This would be perfect accessorized with some sand and shells for the warmer months, but also amazing in the winter with some mini pine cones, acorns, and rocks or greenery. I think it has a real upscale, high-end look, and basically it cost us $2.50 worth of glass from Dollar Tree. A winner, don't you think? For this next DIY, I've cut about 15 pieces of jumbo wood craft sticks, which you can get at Home Depot or Walmart, and I cut the rounded ends off. I cut each stick to about 3 inches long, and I'm going to be painting both sides of the 15 sticks with some folk art antique wax, which I will link for you below. I like to use a dry paper towel also to rub off the excess wax as I'm going, and all in all, this stuff dries very quickly. I'm using 2 of these round black plastic framed mirrors from Dollar Tree, and these mirrors have a lip in the back behind the frame, and we're going to be attaching the 2 mirrors together back to back using our painted craft sticks. It did take me a minute to figure out the best way to do this. I tried hot gluing one craft stick at a time to both sides, but I quickly realized it was much easier to attach all my craft sticks to one side first and then to the other mirror all at once. I found 4 of these wood half rounds left over from a previous project, and I love to recycle, so I decided I would use these on the bottom of the 2 mirrors to keep them standing upright and steady, because this whole thing is a circle and it will roll unless you give it some feet. Next, I grabbed this roll of adhesive faux leather, and I will link this for you below, but you can use the Dollar Tree faux leather for this too. I cut a piece of the leather off and folded it in half onto itself so that it would be double-sided, and I then cut that double-sided piece into 2 pieces that would resemble leather straps, which is the look that I was going for. I'm using a dab of hot glue to attach the ends of both straps to the tops of both of the mirrors so that they will look like leather handles at the very top. To embellish the leather handles, I used 4 of these gold thumbtacks from Dollar Tree, and I simply used a wire cutter to cut the actual sharp tack part off of that so that they'll look like gold studs, and then I attached the gold studs at the ends of each of my leather straps. And this is my mirrored vase or plant holder, and it is giving me some little drummer boy vibes. I don't even know why, but I really like it just the same. I love the matte look of the mirror frames because it almost looks like black metal, and it works perfectly with stained wood craft sticks and brown faux leather. The gold studs are just an added bonus, and I am really loving this mirrored plant holder. For this next DIY, I'm using this old, ugly pink vase that I found in my hoarder's basement, and I have never liked it, but I want to transform it. I also realized I had literally no white spray paint anywhere in my house, so it is time for a Home Depot trip, but we must craft on. So I am using this Rust-Oleum Stone Gray paint and primer just to get rid of that ugly pink. I also didn't want the vase to be gray, but now that it has a primer coat on it, I mixed up some baking soda for texture with some apple barrel matte white paint, which I will link for you below, and I apply 2 coats of the chalky white paint mixture to make the vase white and slightly textured. I had this roll of paper raffia from Amazon, which I will link for you below, but Dollar Tree also has loose raffia that you could use for this as well. I cut 4 pieces of the raffia that were long enough to fit around the diameter of my vase, and I also added a little extra length to each of those 4 pieces so that I would have extra. Then I cut 9 shorter pieces of raffia for each of those 4 longer pieces that wrap around the vase. So that's going to be a total of 36 pieces of the shorter raffia, and you will see why we're going to need those in a moment. So now I take one of the 4 long pieces of raffia and I find the middle, and I'm going to take a shorter piece of the raffia and fold it in half, tuck that looped part under the long piece, and pull the ends of the short piece through the loop, just tying that short piece in a lark's knot around the long piece. We are going to tie 9 of these lark's knots onto this long piece of raffia, and we're going to space them about 1.5 inches apart from one another. And I know that that sounds complicated, but it is not, and feel free to pause the video and replay it if you want to see the lark's knot again, because we will be making about 36 of them for this vase. But for now, we are tying 9 shorter pieces of raffia onto this long piece of raffia. Then I take that long piece of raffia with all the lark's knots on it and I tie it in a regular knot onto the top of the vase, and I'm going to use some dabs of hot glue to keep that raffia in place while it's on the vase. I take my second long piece of raffia from those 4 pieces we cut to fit around the vase, and I find the middle, and I begin tying the lark's knots that are already on the vase on the first row onto this second piece of raffia, as you can see me doing right here. And I am just tying them in a normal knot and leaving the same amount of space between the first row and that second row each time I tie another knot so that everything is even, and I hope that that makes sense to you. I'm going to be tying all those existing lark's heads to the second row of raffia until it is wrapped around the vase, creating our second row. Then I use some more dabs of hot glue under some of the knots to keep them where I want them to be and to hold them in place. Next, I trim the leftover hanging raffia under all of those knots using scissors. The only piece that I don't trim is the leftover raffia from tying that second row onto the vase, because that knot is perfectly placed right in between 2 knots next to it on either side. That's going to be the first knot we tie onto our third row, which is that third long piece of raffia that we cut to fit around the vase. I am going to tie that piece around the middle of our long piece of raffia, leaving roughly the same amount of space between rows as we have between the first and the second row, as you can see me doing here. I hope that makes sense to you. Then I begin using my next set of 9 short pieces of raffia. This time each piece I fold in half and tuck the loop under the second raffia row right in the middle of the 2 existing knots that we made on that row. And we are going to pull the ends of that short piece through the loop, making another lark's head knot. I tie the lark's head knot to the third piece of raffia for our third row. I know I'm making this sound so much more involved than it really is. Just pause the video and replay wherever you need to. We are alternating the knots row by row in between the knots on the row above it. I promise it's a really simple concept if you just watch what I'm doing. Then I trim all the leftover hanging pieces from the knots that are on that third row. And once again, I don't trim the hanging piece left over from where we tied the third row onto the vase because it's placed right in between the 2 knots above it. So that will be the first piece we tie to row number 4. And that's our 4th and final long piece of raffia. We're going to be using another 9 pieces of short raffia, and we do this whole row with the loop, each short piece tucked under that third row, and we're going to tie a lark's head knot placed in between the 2 knots above it. Then we tie that same piece to our 4th row, which is the 4th long piece of raffia, and we're going to do this with all 9 short pieces of raffia until that 4th row and the 4th long piece of raffia is attached to the vase as well. I trimmed all those hanging pieces from the 4th row, and now using our final 9 short pieces of raffia, we tie more lark's knots on that 4th row placed between the 2 knots that are already there. And this time we take the hanging raffia from those lark's knots and we're going to glue those hanging pieces to the bottom of the vase. And this is my boho recycled vase, and honestly, considering what this vase looked like before, I am thrilled with how this came out. I love the raffia against the white textured paint. It is just an all-around expensive looking piece of decor that cost us nothing. It just doesn't get any better than that. For this next DIY, I have this clear plastic square plant holder from Dollar Tree. It's got a crack in it. That doesn't matter because we will be covering that up. I used a piece of a Post-it note that was folded in half to trace a rectangle shape in the middle of this side of the plant holder with a chalk, and I am using this thick jute twine that I got on Amazon. I will link it for you below. I'm going to hot glue the outline of this rectangle in the jute and then fill it in with that same jute until we hit the middle of the rectangle and it is totally filled in. Next, I start to hot glue the outline of that whole side with jute, and I begin to fill it in until I get about 3 rows deep, and I realize the space between the center rectangle and the outer outline of the jute has more space on those vertical sides than the top and the bottom, and I want that to all even out. So I add 2 more rows of jute on both of those vertical sides, but I leave that top and bottom row alone. Now I have more of an even amount of clear plastic that's showing through on all 4 of my sides, which is what I wanted. To fill in that clear space, I start to do a free-form kind of zigzag pattern with the jute, as you can see me doing right here. And I do that same pattern all the way around that open clear space until it is completely covered. I do the other 3 sides of my square the exact same way so that the same pattern is repeated 4 times, and then I decided to do the bottom of the square the same way, only this time my middle was an actual square instead of a rectangle shape, but all the other elements of the design went exactly the same way. And this is my jute riser or plant holder or tray base or really anything you want to use it for. I like the fact that as a riser, the top is finished with the design as well. So you can pair it with a clear tray or clear platter and that jute design comes through. It's just a little neutral flair to accent your high-end fall decor. And you know the drill. I want to know what you think. Let me know in the comments which one of these high-end fall home decor Dollar Tree DIYs was your favorite and why. I love hearing from all of you. And if you've enjoyed this DIY video, there is another one waiting for you. Just click that link on your screen for more Medicated Housewife DIYs. Thanks for watching, and until next time, my name is Sarah. I'm the Medicated Housewife, and crafting is my medication.